She texted me 9 words that afternoon. "Don't forget the ice, babe. Everyone will be here by 6. 9 words. I remember smiling at my phone like an idiot. 20 minutes later, I was standing in a hotel parking lot, watching my wife walk out with my sister's husband. And the worst part? They were laughing. I want you to understand something before I go any further. I was not a perfect husband, but I was a loyal one. 25 years, 2 kids, 1 house, 1 life. I worked brutal hours, missed weekends, ran on 4 hours of sleep more times than I can count. Not because anyone asked me to, but because that's what I believed a man was supposed to do for his family. Provide, protect, show up. Every single day. And for 25 years, I told myself that kind of love was enough, that it built something unbreakable. That was my first and most expensive mistake. Because loyalty doesn't make you immune to betrayal. It just makes the betrayal more catastrophic when it finally arrives. The truth is, I knew something was wrong long before I was ready to admit it. My wife started guarding her phone 3 years before I found out. Took it everywhere. Bathroom, laundry room, out to check the mail. If it buzzed while I was nearby, her whole body shifted subtle, but real. I told myself it was stress. Then I told myself all marriages go through cold seasons. Then, my daughter called me one night, nervous, dancing around something she didn't want to say. "Dad, does Mom seem weird to you?" Like, she says she's always with Aunt Rachel, but Aunt Rachel's been posting from places that don't match up. I laughed it off. I actually laughed it off. Because that's what loyal people do. We defend the person we love against the evidence that person is destroying us. Looking back, that phone call was a door I refused to walk through. And refusing it cost me everything. A few weeks later, I found a hotel receipt. Small thing, folded, tucked away where it didn't belong. 2 drinks, shared appetizer. Valet parking. A town neither of us had any business being in. One of the drinks was an old-fashioned. My wife never drank old-fashions. My brother-in-law did. I stood in the kitchen holding that receipt for a long time. Not angry, not suspicious, afraid. Because something in my body already understood what my mind was still refusing to accept. From that moment on, I started watching. Quietly, carefully. Every errand, every excuse, every "I'm helping my sister." The pattern built itself piece by piece, like a noose tightening so slowly you barely feel it until it's already around your throat. The day it ended began like any other. My wife told me she was spending the afternoon with my sister. Said my sister had been going through a lot emotionally. I kissed her cheek. Told her to drive safe. Left for work. Simple, normal, ordinary. But I forgot a tool in the garage. That's it. That's the whole thing. One forgotten tool. I came back around lunchtime to a quiet, empty house, and then I saw it. Her tablet, sitting on the kitchen counter. The screen lit up with a notification. I wasn't snooping. I just looked. Room 214. Side entrance. Miss you already. My heart didn't race. It dropped. Like the floor had just disappeared beneath me. I picked up the tablet. My hands were shaking, but my head was completely still. There was a hidden app. Initials instead of names. Deleted threads. But enough fragments to piece together a picture I could never unsee. Excuses they used on me. Meeting spots. Close calls they'd laughed about. Plans laid out with the casualness of people who had been doing this for a very long time. And then one line. One sentence that I will carry for the rest of my life. Your husband is a good man, but he was never you. I read it 4 times. A good man, not her husband. Not the father of her children. Not the man who missed sleep and weekends and pieces of himself to build a life for his family. Just a good man. Do you understand what it does to a person to realize their greatest quality was being used as their eulogy? I set the tablet down. I grabbed my keys, and I drove straight to that hotel. Her car was in the lot. His truck was parked right beside it. I sat in my truck for a full minute just staring, still hoping somehow that reality would become reasonable. It didn't. I walked inside, stood near the elevator, waited, and when those doors opened, they stepped out together. My wife, my brother-in-law, laughing, shoulders almost touching. And then she reached up and touched his chest, gently, familiarly, the exact same way she used to touch mine. That hit harder than anything else I saw that day. Because that touch wasn't reckless lust. That was comfort. That was a relationship. Then, he kissed her not like people who feel guilty kiss. Not hurried. Not desperate. Tenderly, like they belonged to each other. I hid behind a column like a ghost in my own life and watched them walk to separate exits in separate cars. Professionals. That was the word that kept repeating in my mind as I walked back to my truck. Not monsters. Not strangers. Professionals. People who had become so practiced at deceiving me that it no longer cost them anything. I sat in that parking lot for over an hour. No tears. No calls. No breakdown. Just silence. The kind of silence that sounds like an entire life powering down. And in that silence, I made one decision. I was done asking dishonest people to explain honesty to me. I went home. The house looked exactly the same: couch, family photos, the quiet kitchen which felt obscene. Everything in its place, while nothing in my life belonged to me anymore. I went upstairs and packed a duffel bag. Jeans, shirts, boots, meds, my old watch. Cash from the safe. Then I sat on the edge of the bed I'd shared with my wife for 25 years and looked around the room like a man seeing it for the last time. There was an anniversary photo on her nightstand, both of us smiling, her hand on my chest. I turned it face down. Then I wrote 3 notes. My wife's note, I know. Don't contact me. My attorney will. My sister's note, you betrayed me too. Don't look for me. My children's note took the longest. Because they were innocent, and innocent people always bleed the most in someone else's war. I told them I loved them. I told them none of this was their fault. I told them I needed time before I could speak without falling apart. And then I took off my wedding ring and left it on the kitchen counter, right next to the bucket I was supposed to fill with ice. At 5:12 that evening, I walked out the door. By the time they arrived at 6, I was already gone. I drove to an old friend's cabin in Montana, a man who understood pain without turning it into a conversation. He opened the door, looked at my face, and said, "You can talk now, or you can start chopping wood." So I chopped wood. For hours, until my hands blistered and my arms gave out and the physical pain finally gave my mind somewhere else to go. When I told him what happened, I expected pity. Instead, he said, "You don't come back from something like this. You come back around it." That sentence saved my life, because I stopped trying to return to the man I was before. That man was gone. The husband who believed love meant safety gone. The brother who believed blood meant loyalty gone. The fool who thought being a good man guaranteed being treated like one gone. On day 3, I picked up a burner phone. My son had sent 1 email. 1 line. "Dad, please just tell me you're alive." That's when I finally cried. Not in the hotel lot. Not while packing. Not when I took off my ring. At that message. Because no matter how shattered I was, my children were still reaching for me through the wreckage. I wrote back 3 words: safe. Love you. My wife, meanwhile, sent wave after wave of messages, begging, explaining, confessing, backtracking, crying through paragraphs. It's not what you think. It ended before. I always loved you. That last one almost made me sick. Because love without loyalty isn't love. It's just selfishness in a nicer outfit. By the time I came back, the whole family had collapsed. My sister had confronted her husband. My kids had found the notes. My wife had fallen apart. Everyone was in chaos. I wasn't coming back for closure. I was coming back for separation. When I walked through the front door, my wife looked at me like she'd seen a ghost. She ran toward me crying, reaching, and I stopped her with one hand in the air. Just one hand. One word. No, that word had more truth in it than all 5 years of her lies. She started sobbing. I didn't, and I could see that scared her more than any argument ever could. I asked her one question. How long? She could barely speak. Almost 5 years. I nodded. Then I asked the only thing that actually mattered. Were you ever going to tell me? A long pause. I kept hoping it would just go away. Go away. That's what betrayal sounds like when it finally runs out of excuses. Not remorse, not integrity. Just cowardice dressed up as hope. I asked if she loved him. She said the saddest thing I've ever heard another person say. I don't know what love means anymore. And for the first time I believed her. Because people who live double lives don't just betray others. Eventually, they become strangers to themselves too. The divorce was ugly. The lawyers. The assets. The relatives whispering. The friends pretending to be neutral so they didn't have to choose. My sister's marriage blew apart. Her husband sent me a long message full of excuses, dressed up as complexity. I deleted it before I finished the second paragraph. Men like that always want grace from the people they showed none to. My daughter stopped speaking to her mother for months. My son tried to keep the peace until one night he looked at my ex-wife and said, "Dad gave you everything. The least you could have done was not humiliate him in his own family." Nobody moved. Nobody defended her. Because some truths are too naked to argue with. It's been years now. And if you're wondering whether I healed, the answer is complicated. I survived first. That was the only goal for a long time. Then I rebuilt. Slowly, quietly, one day. Without warning, I realized I'd gone nearly 2 full days without thinking about that hotel. That was the first sign I was getting free. Not because I'd forgotten, I never will, but because the memory had stopped owning every room in my head. That's what healing actually is. Not erasing what happened, just refusing to let it become your entire identity. My ex-wife asked to meet me once, a while after the divorce was final. Quiet coffee shop. Middle of the afternoon. She looked older, smaller, like guilt had carved years into her face. She didn't try to justify anything. That phase was over. She just looked at me and said, "I didn't deserve how much you trusted me." And for the first time since all of this started, she said something true enough to matter. I looked at her and said, "I loved you honestly." That should have been enough. She cried. I didn't. I put money on the table, stood up, and walked out into the rain. And somewhere between the door and the parking lot, something finally clicked into place. I didn't lose my worth. When they betrayed me, they lost their right to be near it. So if you're listening to this, and something in your life feels off right now, if the silence has changed texture, if explanations come a little too quickly, if your gut keeps tapping you on the shoulder while your heart begs for one more excuse, hear me. Do not gaslight your own soul just because the truth is inconvenient. And if the worst happens, if your life splits into a before and after, do not beg to be chosen by people who practiced deceiving you. Walk away if you need to. Disappear if you have to. Protect what's left of your dignity. Because some betrayals don't deserve your tears. Some people explain themselves for years with their actions, and your silence becomes the only answer they actually earned. That's why I left without a word. Not because I was broken, not because I gave up, but because after 25 years of loyalty, 5 years of lies, and one hotel lobby that rewrote my entire life, silence was the only thing I had left that still belonged to me. And for the first time, in a very long time, I chose me.